everyone, so welcome to today's video. Thanks for joining me. As you can tell by the title of this video, it's the best in beauty videos that are going to start being posted on this channel. It is already that time of the year where I have to share with you my favorites from this past year of 2024. I've decided to break up this video into several different parts. Today's going to be focused on just the face products. So everything in that complexion category, bronzer, blush, highlight, it's all going to be featured in today's video. And as always, I'm also going to be including some demos as I use some of these products that I am wearing, all of them today, including some of my favorites for lips and eyes, which you will see in a separate video. But this is going to be just the face products, and I can't demo everything, so I'm going to show you some clips of what I did pull from this collection of tons of products to create the look that I'm wearing throughout this entire video. Everything is going to be listed and linked for you down below, including the tools that I use to apply these products, so it's easy for you to shop if you want that specific item and tool to apply it. It's going to be listed for you and easy to find in the description box, so expand the info box down below. And let's go ahead and get this video started. Get a snack, get a drink, because it's going to be a long one, and let's go ahead and get started. For the products, I'm going to show them to you in the way of application for me personally. I always start with my complexion, so we're moving into primers. I chose to demo today two primers mixed together. So the e.l.f. Liquid Putty Primer and the newest primer from Milani, the Blur Out Primer. I have had these for quite some time. This is a fairly new product, the Milani one, to their range of products. This e.l.f. Liquid Putty has been out for quite some time, but this is actually a really nice, easy to use primer. It's pretty thin. It's not as thick as the Blur Out from Milani. So I like to use this all over, or as you see today, I use it pretty much in the parameters of my face and then use the Milani Blur Out where I have larger pores. Let's start with that Liquid Putty Primer from e.l.f. This one I use in the parameters of my face. It's a little bit thinner than the Milani one. The Milani one I like to use in the areas where I have larger pores, because this does smooth out the skin and blur the skin and make it look nice and smooth and even before going in with foundation. I like the e.l.f. primer too. I feel like this is one of my most reached for primers from this brand, and one of my most reached for primers in the drugstore category of my collection of products. I like how it's easy to apply. It goes on and never looks like it kind of interferes with anything that I put on top of it. It always looks like it blends nicely, plays well with foundations and powders. Everything goes on nicely, and I think a primer is really essential to creating that perfect base. The Milani Conceal and Perfect, I have used this so much since I bought it. I have like a big chunk of it's missing. I actually hit the bottom of it already. I use this almost every single day because I do have large pores, especially right through here and over the nose. So that's typically where I target this specific primer. I have used this all over and it's fine, and I like it. I like how it makes my skin visually look smoother and completely blurred, almost like I just applied a filter. So I really love this. And it also comes with a little spatula. It looks like that you can take out and scoop out your products, which I like. And then it just kind of fits right in there, snaps in, and it's good to go, and it's always going to be with the cap, so you never have to worry about actually losing that. So it's a very nice sort of detail that they've added to this product packaging. The other primer is the Prime Lab from L'Oreal. This is the pore minimizer. I have a few minis of these that were gift with purchases through the Ulta site, and I have said how much I've loved this before in plenty of videos that I've used this, that when I run out of these little mini ones, I will be buying the full size. This actually has a bit more skincare benefits to it than the other primers that I talked about. This has a 1% AHA, LHA, BHA complex. So basically those are alpha hydroxy acids, beta hydroxy acids, to help sort of get the skin nice and clear and smooth. It's all about kind of minimizing the texture and pores. This has been one that I have enjoyed so much, and it does come in a much larger tube when you buy the full size, but this does come out with a subtle kind of pink tint to it, but when you blend this in, it doesn't really have any color. And when you apply it, you can really feel that smoothness when you blend this in, but you can actually see how it kind of creates almost like a blurred / mattified effect to the skin. So if you have acne prone skin, you may actually like this because of the BHA, which is the salicylic acid, the AHA that's included. So I feel like it's a little bit of a step up from something just basic like the e.l.f. Poreless Putty or the Milani Conceal and Perfect that just kind of blurs the skin. This one has a little bit extra, so it's kind of somewhat like a treatment. That's how I kind of think of it, but that's also one of my favorites from the drugstore. So let's move into foundation next. That's the next part of my routine. So today I decided to use my L'Oreal Tinted Serum. This is the True Match one. I have the shade 0.5-2, which is very light. That's the one that I demoed today. But I started off with this product in the 2-3, which is a little bit darker. And I'll just show you, this is the lightest shade, and then this is the next shade up. So this one is a little dark. This is what I started off when I tested this formula out for the first time. As you can see, I've used quite a bit of it. That may not seem like a lot to some people, but if you could see my collection of foundations from the drugstore and high-end, it's an excessive amount. Like, I have to declutter. And for me to be able to use and see that I'm actually making my way through says a lot. So what I like about this foundation, or this skin tint, I should say, is the actual coverage. Even though it says serum tint, it's actually something that provides coverage. And I use this in place of foundation because of the amount of coverage that it gives. I would say I can get a light coverage and I can build this up to a medium. If you look at the bottles, you may see a bit of a sheen running through it. And that just adds a nice kind of healthy luminosity to the skin without looking shimmery, without looking dewy. It's not like a disco ball. There's no big particles of glitter or anything that's pretty big and obvious when you see it in the bottle and also on the face. That is another thing that I love about it, is that it makes the skin just look healthy. Gives you that nice coverage, makes the skin look like skin, but just a little bit more perfected. And that's kind of the vibe that I like to go for on a day-to-day basis. So that's why I've reached for this so much. And I think L'Oreal does really great with foundation. So their other foundation, the super blendable one from the True Match line as well, has lots of different colors from the fairest to fair to the deepest of deep, and the undertones that you need: neutral, cool, and warm. I have the neutral light and the N0.5. I like to use this on its own. It does give me a more skin-like finish, but what I like to do with this one is mix it into the darkest shade of my tinted serum so that I can actually make use out of this, since this is mostly kind of like a summer shade for me. If I have a foundation from the drugstore that I ordered or picked up in person that is a little dark and I don't want to go back and exchange it, same thing with high-end, I will add some of this foundation from L'Oreal into that to kind of lighten it. So I like having this specific one, but the formula itself on this foundation is very skin-like and very sort of natural looking, and you can definitely build this up. I get a nice medium coverage out of this, and this is one of the longest standing foundations at the drugstore. Of course, the packaging is different, and I'm sure years from now it's going to look different from what you see here, but it's the same sort of classic formula with the right undertones and the largest selection of shades. I think they did a great job with those foundations and that serum tint. And then I have to mention my Clinique Even Better foundation. This has been one of my favorites. I discovered this earlier this past year, and I have 2 shades of this because I love it so much. I decided that I needed to have a kind of more year-round shade, and then one that I could use in the summertime. This has an SPF of 25. It's a serum-based foundation with more skincare benefits, but what I love about this is that it wears so incredibly well. It has the right amount of coverage for my personal needs, which is a solid medium. It is a buildable, so I could get a full coverage out of this, but it never looks heavy. It never breaks me out with the skincare additives to it. It wears so well. I can put this on early in the morning, which when I do my makeup, just like FYI, I do my makeup while my kids are still sleeping in the morning, especially if I'm going to film content, and I'm the last one to go to bed and take my makeup off. So this wears all day long and it doesn't budge, and it looks so beautiful. So I've got to shout it out because it is so good. Let's move on to concealers. I've got some high-end and some drugstore. So let's start with the drugstore ones. The first one that I'm going to show you is the L'Oreal Infallible one. This is the full coverage concealer that I demoed today. I did mix it with one of my high-ends, again, to be able to show you as many products as possible. But this is a full coverage concealer. I wear the shade 330 Ivory, and I like how this gives me a full coverage look without looking heavy. And I can tell the difference when I go to set it. Sometimes when you use full coverage concealers under the eye and you go to set it with powder, it can look heavy, dry. Almost like it kind of accentuates the dryness. If you have fine lines and wrinkles, it makes those more apparent. But this is one of those concealers that has that full coverage that looks so beautiful under the eyes, sets well, never looks heavy, never looks cakey, never kind of settles and accentuate anything that I don't want under the eye. So this is a solid at the drugstore. And then of course my NYX Can't Stop Won't Stop. I have to show you this because this is one of my absolute favorites. I discovered this, I believe, last year, and I have a couple of shades, so I just pulled one random from my collection to show it to you. This is actually a really nice sort of full coverage concealer. And I say sort of because I use a beauty blender to apply, or a beauty sponge to blend my concealers on most days. So I feel like that kind of knocks the coverage down a little bit to a medium. But if I were to use this with a brush, any brush, like a BK Beauty brush, a concealer brush, I can get pretty close to full coverage with this. And this is one of the few products from NYX that I actually really love. I think that this concealer is really great. And like I said, I have a couple of shades, even one that's more tan for actual bronzing. And it's a concealer that kind of blends out really nicely. Again, kind of similar to the L'Oreal one, where it doesn't look heavy or cakey and it just sits so nicely under the eyes. I've got 3 high-end concealers to show you. So I'm going to start with the first one that I demoed today, that High Glam concealer from Natasha Denona. I wear shade P1. This is one of those really great products at Sephora that is worth the hype, worth the price point. The formula is just beautiful. It gives me that coverage, that sort of peachy tone, helps kind of correct. So I'm knocking out a couple steps in one. I'm getting coverage and a little bit of correction because of that peachy tone. And this is sometimes all I actually need for my concealer under the eyes. Sets well, never has any issues. It is one of those beautiful formulas that I just highly recommend. The Clinique Even Better All Over Concealer kind of matches with the foundation that I spoke about earlier. Again, same thing with the foundation as with this concealer. It is one of those that just looks so pretty. It's an underrated brand. I don't hear a lot of people talking about Clinique, but this Even Better concealer is actually really good. It does come with a little sponge tip. I never use these. I don't think that it's actually good for blending, but the formula inside, the doe foot, it's fragrance free as well. That doe foot is kind of rounded. If I can clean this off, I can show you. It's a little bit more of a rounded doe foot. Kind of sits right in that inner corner really nicely. I like to use this on its own or to mix with other concealers, as I often do. But I like the coverage of that one, and I like how it looks when I set it. I do the baking technique, as you will see here momentarily. So when I do that technique and put a lot of powder very heavily to just sort of let it sit, when I dust that away, I can really tell if a concealer is going to be something that I reach for based off of the way it looks. And all of these concealers, including this one that I'm going to show you from the Makeup by Mario line, look incredibly beautiful if you do that baking technique. So the Makeup by Mario Surrealskin Concealer, this came out, I believe it was last year. Shade 140 is perfect for me. I love this so much. I wear this, again, one of these concealers you can kind of start to see a little bit through because I've used so much of it. I like that sort of paddle-shaped doe foot applicator that's a little bit more kind of flattened. So it kind of sits really nicely there, and you can also use it on the side and just kind of do your little dots if you like to do that. This is a good concealer that you can use all over the face as well, around the sides of the nose. This one looks so beautiful. This is full coverage, and what impressed me so much, and I think I've mentioned this before in a previous video, is that I have been able to retain the coverage on this with a damp beauty sponge and get the same coverage with a sort of concealer style brush or any type of makeup brush. And sometimes when you use damp beauty sponges, you take away product from the skin and it kind of gets absorbed into that sponge. So when you use a brush, you really get the maximum color payoff, the maximum amount of coverage out of your products using brushes. And that's what I noticed with this concealer, is that it was full coverage with a damp beauty sponge and full coverage with a brush. And again, these concealers, they all look incredibly beautiful on the skin, and they don't accentuate any texture, any dryness, fine lines, wrinkles, and they just look smooth under the eyes. So I've got to hand it to these because these are absolutely incredible. Let's go ahead and move into the category of powders. I have 4 loose powders to talk about, so let's go ahead and jump on in. First one, this is the one that I demoed today. It's the Diamond Blur powder from Physicians Formula. As I mentioned before, I do the baking technique, and I started this months ago, and I've been doing it a lot more frequently. And you have to use the right powders for that. And I think that this powder from Physicians Formula is a really nice one that is very thin and very smooth to do that technique with. And I actually like using this to set my entire face. As you saw, I use a kind of powder puff to kind of press the remainder of the powder over the rest of my face, but I did the baking technique under the eyes. And the packaging is so pretty. You can see it looks like a faceted diamond. So this is really nice for setting your foundation for that baking technique all over the face, under the eyes. You can use this to set your primer or concealer on the lids if you do that. It's a nice powder from the drugstore that I feel like actually works, and it feels really smooth, very silky on the skin. The other two are really kind of bigger, more bulky type of packaging, but they're actually really good. So the Maybelline Fit Me loose powder, I wear the shade Fair Light, and then the Fenty loose powder in Lavender. So let's start with the Maybelline. This has been a classic go-to at the drugstore. Everyone loves it. It's a nice alternative to some higher end powders. I am a huge fan of my Huda Beauty, which we'll get into in a minute, but this is actually pretty close from the drugstore that I can get to the Huda Beauty for baking, for setting, and again, it's one of those you just can't go wrong with it. It's very affordable, easy to find. So the Fenty one in the lavender shade, the Pro Filter, I forget the full name, the Pro Filter Instant Retouch Setting Powder. It's a long name. The lavender shade, I say that this is probably one that I would recommend to someone who wants maximum brightness. I was not prepared for the level of brightness that this gave me. I bought this back in September, I believe, and I just could not believe the level of brightness. So anytime I want to look bright and like awake, I've had my rest, I've been taking my vitamins, I've been drinking my water, and my skin is just bright and glowy, this is what I'm gonna reach for. Not glowy in the sense of shimmer, but just like this, I don't know, there's just something magical about this powder. You put it on and you just radiate this lightness coming out from under the eyes. Right here, if you set this area where you have larger pores, if you have that concern, I feel like it's such a good powder, and I will have, honestly, this powder for the rest of my life, because look at this. This is huge. That's the only downside, is that it's not quite travel friendly, but you know, you can always kind of put this into something else if you do travel. But if you're looking for a brightening, like super brightening powder, this is where it's at. Other powder is the Huda Beauty Easy Bake. Sugar Cookie in the fragrance free is the one that I have. I started off with this powder last year in the Pound Cake, which is a little bit more of a yellowy tone. But this powder has been talked about quite a bit because of its ability to blur and kind of look like a filter applied. But I also really love using this for that baking technique, for longevity, to blur out the look of my pores. This is a really nice powder. I've often recommended this in previous videos plenty of times. Love this powder. It's very finely milled, and you can use a small amount to set just to remove that sort of wet, tacky look of a concealer, or you can do that baking technique as I mentioned. Either way, it's a great powder to use for that. You can also use these to set your entire face if you like to use powder all over. It is very finely milled, and I just love the powder formula itself. You do get so much in this sort of packaging. It's a big square component, but you get a lot of product, and there's a lot of hype for good reason. It's a great powder, and I absolutely love it, and I can't be without this powder. Next up is bronzers. I have several to show you because I have lots of favorites, and I just feel like I need to just talk about them all. So let's go ahead and jump into the bronzer category. The first one that I'm going to do a quick mention is the Conceal and Perfect Bronzing Drops from Milani. This is the shade 130 Dark, and I'm going to do a quick shout out. This is what I used throughout the entire summer to darken up my foundation. So a quick little tip for you: if you have a foundation that you love, but you don't want to buy a shade that's a little bit darker for the summer, if you've gotten some color, been out in the sun, vacationing, get yourself some bronzing drops. I chose the darkest in this range to add as a mixer, so that's why I'm using or kind of showing you this today. I did not demo this because I don't need it in the winter time, but this is actually a great product to use to make a foundation a little bit darker. And you bought a foundation, and let's say you're fair like myself, but you ordered a shade that's just a tad too light, and you have something like this in your collection, try adding a little bit of the bronzing drops to deepen it, and you can actually make that foundation work instead of having to go back and return it, exchange it. And I just feel like it's a little nifty thing, so I just kind of wanted to throw that in there. But let's go ahead and start off with the drugstore bronzers. The first one is that Milani cream bronzer. I demoed this today. The shade Hey Honey is the one that I use. This is a beautiful, I can't just tell you this is great. This is, I could talk all day about this bronzer. This is such a luxurious performing formula. The cream formula is super important because I do, as you will see in the video today, I use this as I was letting my bake sit. So typically I would sort of dust that off, but I kind of forgot today. And this never skips, never pulls, never collects any weird spaces or onto dry skin. It kind of just melts right into the skin. I use my dual complexion brush from e.l.f, which is phenomenal, by the way. It's an $8 brush that works beautifully for bronzers and blush. And this never looks heavy, never looks muddy, never kind of, like I said, doesn't accentuate dryness, and I do have textured skin. This goes over powders beautifully, goes over creams and liquids just fine. This is one of the best, if not the best, cream bronzer from the drugstore that you can possibly buy. As of right now, there's nothing that can beat that in my opinion. The other bronzers from the drugstore are powder bronzers. So the NYX Buttermelt bronzer and the L'Oreal Infallible Fresh Wear bronzer. This is the one that I demoed over the Milani cream today. Both of these are beautiful. I love the L'Oreal. In fact, I love mostly everything that I've tried from L'Oreal. It's one of my favorite brands at the drugstore. I love how this just blends the pigment. The color range is great. But these are fairly new from NYX, the Buttermelt bronzers. These are actually really nice. I love the component and the look of it is really nice. The outside matches the tone on the inside, which is a great little bonus there. So if you have a big collection, you can see exactly what you're grabbing. And the formula has a bit of a sheen to it. The Infallible one from the L'Oreal brand is a matte finish. This one has a little bit of a sheen to it, so it just looks really nice and healthy on the skin. It's not shimmery, glittery, sparkly. It's not metallic. It just feels like butter. And when you do swatch it, you will see quite a bit of a sheen. But when you soften and blend this out, and if you use a big fluffy powder brush to do bronzer, you're not really going to see that. It just kind of adds a little bit of a kind of healthy kind of glow to the skin without it being obvious. And I love the tones. They have lots of colors, cool tones, neutral shades, some kind of warmer tones. My other two are actually high-end type of bronzers. So the Makeup by Mario one is one of my absolute favorites. The Soft Sculpt bronzer. I use the shade light medium. I love this. It's perfection. It blends out like a dream. And it is one of my favorite bronzers at Sephora that you can buy at the moment. And then of course, for nostalgia purposes, I went back to the Too Faced one. This is the Chocolate Soleil. If I can get this open, looks like that. It's a classic. It's an OG. It is so good. This is the Chocolate Soleil, the matte one, and it smells heavenly. It smells like hot cocoa. I actually did hot cocoa with my kids yesterday, and this just kind of brought back that smell. And it smells so good. I could sit here all day telling you how wonderful this smells. It's like the best chocolate scent, and it's like real chocolate. It's not fake, artificial. It's really nice. Both of these blend out beautifully. They are just solid matte formulas, by the way, that just kind of sit really nice on the skin. They're not drying. They don't look heavy or weird. They don't get muddy on the skin. It doesn't make you look like an Oompa Loompa. These two shades are perfection, and the formulas are just A+. Now we get to talk about blush, and I have a blush obsession. I absolutely love blush. In fact, I love all things makeup. My collection is just out of control. But my blush drawer is something that I need to get it under control. It's one of those types of products that I always somehow find a way to sneak one into an order. Wherever I'm placing an order or shopping in person, I always walk out with a blush product because I just love blush. So let's go ahead and start with the affordable blushes from the drugstore, the NYX Buttermelt blushes. For the same reason I love the bronzer. These are creamy. They're ultra pigmented, so you need the tiniest little bit. I'm telling you, do not go overboard with these because it's going to be an intense amount of pigment. Don't let that scare you. Just pick up a little bit, tap it off on the back of your hand, or buff it into the palm of your hand, and then apply it. The shade range is beautiful. The packaging is very much like the bronzers, where the outside matches the inside. And the shades that are in my hand right now are the Butter Together, which is a soft pink, and For the Butter, which is a pretty soft mauve shade. This one leans a little bit more kind of purpley, but it's really nice, kind of deep. It almost matches my little cardigan there. And I just love this formula. It's really easy to work with. And again, it has a bit of a, I would say a little bit of a sheen, but not glitter and not kind of sparkle. It's just a really nice formula that sits really pretty onto the skin. If you want a blush that's completely matte, then you may not like this, but the level of shimmer that this has is not really that intense to where someone with combination to oily skin or oily skin may not like this. It's just a little hint of something there just to make the skin look like skin, to make your cheeks look like they're naturally flushing. So I do think that this formula is pretty solid, and I think that these are right at that $10 mark at the drugstore, so it's affordable, easy to find. Love these so much. I'm going to finish talking about the powder blushes, and then we'll move into creams because I have quite a bit to say about creams. So for my high-end pick for blushes, I have to hand it to the Haus Labs formula. These are just beautiful. So this is the old packaging, which is a little bit larger, and they've kind of scaled it down, giving you that soft touch matte look with the matching color on the outside as well. It's smaller, as you can tell, a huge difference in packaging, but the formula is still the same. It's beautiful. It looks like velvet, blends like a dream. One thing I will say about these is just like the NYX Buttermelt blushes, they do come with quite a bit of pigment. I just absolutely adore it, and I do like the smaller packaging. It's a lot more compact, and you still get quite a bit of product, and the formula did not change, which is a great thing, and they're just ultra pigmented. Do you see that? This shade specifically is French Rosette, and it's just beautiful for fall and winter. I really love the Hibiscus Haze. Let me show you a swatch of that one really quickly. Hibiscus Haze, do you see that? And the one that went viral is that Dragon Fruit Daze. Let me show you one more swatch because I love playing with blush. It's that really bright bubblegum pink color, which is so intense. But this actually looks really pretty on the skin. It looks scary in the pan, but it's not. It's beautiful and very flattering. Now let's go ahead and get into the liquids and creams. I'm going to start off with my absolute favorite liquid blush formula. When I tried these for the first time several months ago when they launched, I was hooked immediately. I started off, I believe, with one shade or maybe two, went back for more. It's the liquid blushes from L'Oreal. These are absolutely incredible. The amount of pigment, the blend on these, and I always do my blush after I set my face, after I do powders, whatever it is that I'm doing. This always goes as a final step before highlighter, and oftentimes I do blend these over powders, and it never looks heavy, never looks like it's not blending. It doesn't cling. It's like a dream to work with. If you have not tried these, please try them. The ones that I have are the dewy versions. They do have some 3 other shades that have more shimmer. I don't typically like a lot of sheen and shimmer in my blushes, so I went with the 3 dewy formulas. And the dewiness is just that healthy glow where it just kind of melts into the skin. It's not shimmery. It's not glittery. It's spectacular. Like that is the top elite liquid blush formula from the drugstore. And second to that would have to be the new Camo blushes from e.l.f. And I say new because they came out with some new shades recently, but the line of Camo liquid blushes has been out for quite some time. Again, I just pulled the random ones from my collection to show you the actual component. These are, let me tell you, some of my favorite liquid blushes, and they blend out. They blend out like something that you would spend 3-4 times the cost. Like these are insanely affordable, easy to find at the drugstore. You can order them online, e.l.f. the website, Ulta.com. Wherever you buy your drugstore products, you will see these. These are so incredible, and these are very, very pigmented. Same thing with the L'Oreal. They have a lot of pigment, but they blend out so well that I'm not scared. And if you're a beginner, don't be scared. Just use a little. Let me show you. So this is the e.l.f. one. When you take this out, it has a lot of product. You don't need that. That's just too much. You really only need a dot. That is all you need for one cheek. And depending on the tone that you pick, that could be sufficient for both sides. You take your brush. I'm telling you, this e.l.f. dual complexion brush, you need this. So if you're going to buy these blushes, pick this up too. Take your brush and just kind of do this and rotate the brush in circular motions to coat the bristles with that formula. And then you just kind of, I already have blush on, which I did demo the one from L'Oreal today, but I'm going to just go on with this one and just more is more. And you just want to tap in circular motions like this. And if you want, you can always go back and add. It's easier to add than to take away, but these are so good. For the high-end liquid blushes, I have some that I'm going to feature in a video that I'm going to do honorable mentions, just because they're not that long in my collection, but I have quickly fallen in love with those. But these, I think, are different. They're unique. And they're the Blush Pops from Polite Society. I ordered 2 shades when these first launched. These are actually called Blush Pop Powder Blush Stick. You heard that right, a powder blush stick. That's why it's unique. I love the component. It's small. It's so cute. It almost looks like a lip balm, lip treatment type of thing. But when you sort of unscrew this cap here, you will see that that's what the product looks like. And you can twist this up. But what I love about this, let me just show you a swatch here. But that is one swatch there. So you can see that shade is called Paris. What I like about this is that it goes on like a cream, but when you feel this, it actually feels like a powder. It's very interesting, very unique. It's kind of like a liquid, blush, cream, hybrid powder type of thing. It's very different and unique. So I'm going to give it its little moment to shine here in this video because I actually really do love this formula. The other shade that I own is called Sydney, and I will show you that shade there. It's a little bit more toasty, a little bit more earthy, but when you blend these out, it goes on and blends like velvet on the skin, so silky, so smooth. And it's such an interesting texture that you really need to feel this. I have nothing in my collection that's quite like this. It's like a cream that feels like a powder. It's very bizarre, but it works, and you can pick these up at Ulta. And I just, again, that packaging and that soft kind of light blush pink is just absolutely adorable. I love these so much. Let's talk some highlighters. I have so many in my collection that I just love, but these truly are some of the best. If you love a highlight, glowy, dewy, some of these are a little bit softer, but some can give you very blinding. You will be seen from outer space. I've got you covered. Okay, so let's start with the affordable ones. The first one is the Physicians Formula Butter Glow Press Powder. This is actually called a press powder, but it actually has quite a bit of glow. So this is not a powder for me at all. And I don't think anybody's gonna use this to set their face because it has a glow to it. It looks like a planet, does it not? So beautiful. When you swirl this, do you see that? This is probably the softest and lightest highlight out of the bunch that I'm gonna show you. Let me just kind of swatch this here. When you put this on, it just looks really soft, really kind of light, ethereal, candlelit kind of glow. So if you don't like highlight, you don't want something obvious, or maybe you have more mature skin and you feel like highlighter is something that you cannot do. Yes, you can. You need this one from Physicians Formula because a little bit of this goes such a long way, and it feels smooth, and it's just such a wonderful formula. Do you see that glow? I mean, stop, right? Like, it's just so pretty. I love this. Now, my other drugstore pick that I demoed today will give you an intense highlight in like 2 seconds flat. It's the Infallible Fresh Wear Highlighters from L'Oreal. These are new to the line from this past year. This shade specifically though, this one here. This shade is called Champagne Glow. OMG. This is blinding. Like absolute, you will be seen from outer space. This is not for the faint of heart. This is not for someone who does not like highlighter. You have to love highlighter to be able to enjoy this and appreciate the glow. The formula is just top notch. This feels like something that I bought at Sephora. If you were to cover this packaging up and the label and swatch it and look at it, you would probably think it's high end. That's the performance of this product. It is just elite. It has a mirror on the underside of the component, so if you travel, that's great. But this formula is beautiful. I have that on today, and let me tell you, this is one of my absolute favorites from the drugstore and the Physicians Formula. These are my top 2 picks. They both give a very different look. This is very intense, very icy, very bold. This is soft, this is light, this is candlelit. This is, I've had a great facial, I've been drinking my water, and my skin just glows, and it's like radiating out of my skin. This is one of those, it's not messing around. It's coming to play, okay? So if you like glow, this is where it's at. My high-end highlighters, I've got to talk about 2. One is an OG classic. It's a staple. It's the MAC highlighter. This one is the Soft and Gentle. This is it. This is absolute incredible. It's divine. I just can't get enough of this. It's an old school product. This is beautiful. When you put this on, you just look like $1,000,000, okay? I'm just going to say it. When you put this on, you look like $1,000,000. I don't care who you are. This is just absolute. Let me just show you. Let's just appreciate how beautiful this looks. But when this blends into the skin, I'm telling you, you're going to look fabulous. The other one is the Makeup Forever. This is the Artist Highlighter in the shade Wherever Pearl. And this is the highlighter that I feel like just completely melts right into the skin. And you don't know where it starts and stops. It's one of those icy kind of highlighters that Wherever Pearl is the perfect shade for someone with fair skin. This brand has lots of different color options to choose from. You can take this out and put it into a palette. But this formula feels just, look at that. Look at that. Like, come on. Tell me that there's anything better at Sephora that you can buy for a highlighter than this. Like, this is just, let me just swatch that color. It's the perfect icy pinky color that, like I said, it melts right into the skin. I can't stand the packaging and the component. Like, this just gets on my nerves. I'm just going to be honest. I think my camera just cut me off, but what I was saying was that I cannot stand the packaging of this product from Makeup Forever. But the formula is so wonderful and so beautiful that I keep reaching for it, and I gotta mention it because I've used this so much that I adore this color. I think it's the perfect icy, kind of rosy pink shade that has that coolness that looks so beautiful with a cool tone blush, or just really any blush, honestly. So I kind of forgive it for that really lousy packaging because the formula is just something really special that you can purchase at Sephora. So those will be my highlighter picks. Next is going to be a face palette, and I have just one to show you because this kind of takes care of a lot of different steps. I'm a busy gal. I'm a stay-at-home mom of 4 kids. I don't have a lot of time to get ready, and it has to be quick. I have to get myself ready in a very limited amount of time, so the products that I use are super important. So that's why these products that I share with you today are products that I reach for when I have 10 minutes to get ready, maybe 5 minutes, because they just work so well. But on a weekend basis, or when I have to get myself ready to go run some errands, go to the grocery store, I'm always reaching for this face palette from Laura Geller. It's the Baked Full Face of Basics. I just think that this palette is great, and it has a lot of different steps in it. So it has 3 eyeshadows on the top. It's got 2 different highlighters, a soft kind of candlelit one, and then one that's a little bit more intense and dewy. You can use these all on the eyes as well. You've got a bronzer, and the pink buttercream blush is beautiful. But just look at the way the marbleized look to these are. They're just beautiful, and the way the baked blushes are made is very different than traditional pressed powders. They start off as creams. They're put on these terracotta pans, and they're baked like you're doing a batch of cookies. So it's really neat. And I think because of that, these just go onto the skin and they just look so beautiful. They just kind of melt into the skin. They're easy to work with and blend, which is why I reach for this when I'm getting ready to go out on the weekends. Half the time my 2-year-old is sitting right next to me, pulling on my leg, asking me for something, or my 3-year-old, and I've got to get myself ready and I'm multitasking. I can do these formulas from Laura Geller with my eyes closed and never worry about it looking heavy, cakey, patchy, unblended. It just is perfection. So I had to throw this in because this would be my one face palette that I feel like I've gotten so much use out of this past year of 2024, and I can see myself in 2025 most definitely reaching for this because it is just really, really great. And the brand Laura Geller is so underrated. Not enough people talk about her products. Her formulas are so, so good. The final category is setting sprays, and I've got 2. So let's start with the first one that's the high-end, my Charlotte Tilbury setting spray. I buy the minis because they're easier for me to store in my drawers. This is the Airbrush Flawless Setting Spray. This is actually one of those products from her brand that is a high recommended product from me personally because it actually does work. You can use this in between your layers. You can use this to set your makeup at the end. It locks everything into place. It kind of melts all the layers of your makeup together and it looks beautiful. And there's a lot of hype and a lot of talk about her products. A lot of brands try to dupe it because she has some really nice formulas, and I think that this is one of my top favorite setting sprays. But for high end, I've got to give it to Charlotte Tilbury, and this is not the first time that this has been featured in my Best in Beauty videos. I think I talked about it last year. I've talked about this setting spray in many favorites over the last year, 2 years. It's been a long-standing favorite in my collection, and I love the minis because I can just easily store it. I don't have a lot of space in that drawer where I put my setting sprays, so the minis is where I go when I need to restock. I always buy the small ones. And then a new winner for a drugstore setting spray that completely blew me away. We're going to get into it. The 3-second setting mist from L'Oreal. This, I'm going to tell you, it feels like you're spraying hairspray in your face. But if you can get past that, it actually locks everything into place and it keeps your makeup on. And it looks at the end of the day like it did when you first applied it. I love this so, so much that I actually ordered some backups. Let me show you. Okay, so I've got my 2 backups and then I've got my empty. So if this does not tell you how much I love this setting spray, I don't know what does. I've got my regular backups from Amazon ready to go. And when I run low, you better believe I will be on Amazon ordering myself a couple of more bottles or sprayers because these are just so good. So this one is almost completely empty. There's not much coming out, but I wanted to save it for an empties video. But this says up to 36 hours. Now, I will tell you, I don't wear my makeup for that long. I don't know anybody who does, but if you do, that's okay. That's, that's your thing. This can hold your makeup. It says 36 hours. I wear my makeup for a good 9, 10, 12 hours. And again, no change. So as I said, when I take my makeup off at the end of my day, whether it's 9 hours, 10, 12 hours, sometimes longer than that, no change whatsoever from where my makeup looks when I'm taking it off to the way it did when I first applied it. And I've noticed a huge difference with the spray, setting spray, the 3-second mist. So therefore, that's why I have 2 ready to go in my drawer of backstock, because I can't be without these. Well, we made it to the end. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've stayed here to the end of this video, thank you so much. We've been here for quite some time. I had to go upstairs and get myself a drink. I made myself a coffee. I stole my son's Transformer mug. Don't tell him. And I hope that this was enjoyable for you to watch. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was informative to see these products. I try to zip through these and kind of give you the bullet points of the products so that I'm not here all day long talking about this product and sharing with you everything. I have so much to talk about, so much to say about these things, but I wanted to give you those bullet points, what you really need to know before making a purchase. So I hope that you enjoyed it. I know it was kind of like rapid fire through some of it, but I felt like I had to talk really fast to be able to get through all of these categories and kind of condense it all down to this one video for this specific category of face. And let me tell you, looking down at my collection, I was blown away at how many drugstore products actually made it into my best in beauty. And I think this is the first time ever that the majority of my favorites are actually drugstore. And it's incredible because the drugstore has come such a long way. And these formulas are just 10 out of 10, always will be a recommendation. So I hope that this was enjoyable. Thanks for being here, for watching. Don't forget to subscribe because I will be doing the best in beauty for 2024 for eyes, for lips, and I will be doing an honorable mention option as well of some things that I really love that are maybe fairly new, fairly recent, or some things that I really do like that were replaced by something even better. But that doesn't mean that I'm taking away from the goodness of those products. So I'm going to put those in a separate video, maybe do a tutorial style possibly. I'm not quite sure, but I would love to know your favorites if you want to share your favorites in the comment section. Thanks for watching, for being here. Take care, you guys, and we'll talk very soon. Bye-bye.